Okay, welcome to One Stop Co-op Shop. This is Steve. I'm here with a special guest, Jim from One for All Games.
Hi, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you, Jim. So we are here to talk about a game that's currently a Kickstarter, and that is a game called Soul Raiders. So if you're interested in the game, this is a perfect opportunity to ask questions you have.
Yeah, it's running until the 6th of August.
That's right. That's right. So it's still live on Kickstarter, and I assume there's gonna be some method of getting it as a late pledge too, even after that date, in case people watch this later.
Yeah, definitely. In the pledge manager as a light pledge for sure.
Perfect. Perfect. But yeah, if you happen to be watching us live, we are on YouTube. We are watching the chat section. So if you have any questions or comments you want to make, drop them there, and we will field them as they come in. But I've got some questions already prepared, and I think we'll just dive into it. So the first thing I like to always ask our guests is I like to know because we are all like gamers at heart. I feel like in this
Yeah,
hobby, this industry.
usually.
So Jim, what's your background? Like, what type of games have you been playing recently?
Well, recently I went back to I'd say that, an old addiction of mine, which is trading card games, because I've been playing a lot of a game called Flesh and Blood, which is a really awesome game that has been out for a couple of years now, and is kind of Magic the Gathering, but uh, much better in terms of game design, in my opinion.
Cool.
So I went back to that. But at heart, when I started the gaming, I was playing lots of role-playing games and war games, like miniature games, Warhammer and the likes. And then I moved on to board games when I was, I don't know, when I was a teenager, and I started working in the industry, like just as a retail shop,
Hmm.
retail store, and that got me hooked on board games real bad. I was like spending maybe half my salary in in the games that I was selling during the day. I've always been kind of I would say that an omni gamer. I
Uh-huh.
play all kind of games, from the party games to the very heavy ones. But if you give me the choice, I would rather spend a few hours on a game, or like something pretty meaty with lots of lots of themes, or lots of how to say, thing that prick your brain and gets you like really involved in the game session, in the game you are playing. So yeah, it's more heavy games for now.
Okay.
And with the pandemic, I've done mostly role-playing games, which are easier to set up when you have stuff like Roll20 and such. And this card game I was mentioning, because we just play with tiny cameras, and it's pretty easy to do, rather than having a board game night, even though I have tabletop simulator and stuff like that. But
Yeah, it's interesting how much the pandemic has really hit, gamers like us and trying to find ways of playing games remotely like that. And RPGs are fantastic, like you said, for that type of play with like Roll20. I know on the channel we use Tabletop Sim to play as well, remotely on
mhm.
occasion. And but if you have camera systems, like I used to play Lord of the Rings, the living card game, with a buddy of mine on the West Coast. I'm on East Coast of the United States.
Yeah,
We used to play that weekly, and all we had was cameras aiming down at the table and play, and it worked.
nice.
It worked for
Pretty
us.
cool. Yeah, pretty cool. And as for my career, I
Hmm.
basically started working in the industry like when I was 18. I just started with, like, a student job, like in this famous retail store I was mentioning in Paris. And from them, I took the back door to get into the bigger players in the industry. I moved on to work a different position at Asmodee, for instance, as a project manager, like marketing, and then as a freelancer. To do some game design and some project management.
Hmm.
I spent 1 year at Ubisoft as a game designer for a card game, before moving to the US, where I spent 3 years of my life there for my family, and where I got the opportunity to work for a miniature company called Dust, and which allowed me to attend conventions and get to know the US community, which was a
Hmm.
really cool experience, especially if you had minis in it. I was like all in. And for the last 3 years, I came back to France, and I've been working both as project manager slash game designer on some games by like for the publishers directly, and on the other part I was working for the crowdfunding agency, which is a company that helps publishers to get their Kickstarter going, and to like optimize the way they can reach out to the community and the way they can communicate, so they can have more people getting into the campaign.
Man, you've been all over the place in the industry already, so touching a lot of
Yeah.
different aspects.
Lots of like zigzagging here and there, getting to I mean, it's all about meeting
Yeah,
meeting people, and being at the right time at the right place, and
for
just
sure.
doing what you love to do. Because as you said, I'm really passionate about games,
Uh-huh.
and I think many people in our industry are.
Yeah, that's a nail in the coffin for me. Like on how I got into the game, like just being able to share this passion with other people at the table. Like you can be complete strangers with somebody, but you've got this game environment, this game community that everyone can share in and partake in. It's awesome. Love it.
Mhm.
Excellent. Well,
Yeah.
thanks for that. That's a great story. But yeah,
Mhm.
let's dive into probably your more recent efforts on Soul Raiders. So, like I said, this game's currently on Kickstarter. This is a solo and cooperative game. Of course, being on our channel here, the co-op, One Stop Co-op Shop. But some people might not be aware of what it is. So, what is Soul Raiders and how does it play?
So Soul Raiders is a new take on the adventuring and exploration genre. It's a cooperative game, 1 to 4 players. It's by Marc André, who did the Splendor or Barony, for instance. And it's been illustrated by a whole host of artists, including Magali Villeneuve, who did the heroes, and Guillaume Tavernier, who worked on the locations. And the premise of the game is that you are playing powerful warrior mages, which are the hero of the story, and we will evolve in a story divided into 3 chapters. Each chapter of the game is actually a whole setting in itself. It's not a scenario. It's I would say that it's an environment. So in the first chapter is the sanctuary of the Soul Raiders. So the players will get to explore this very old fortress with lots of mystic places, catacombs, natural caves, and stuff like that. While in the second chapter, they will get into a city of smugglers. So they will explore the streets, the dungeons, the secret passage that abounds in this kind of setting. In the third chapter, which is the pits, it's kind of an old ruin where you have like lots of mystic defenses, and where you have the climax of the story of the game. And the whole point of the game is that they will move from one chapter to the other, but the story is experienced in a non-linear way, meaning that in the game you can access a location by lots of different ways. You will not experience the same story exactly, whether I mean, in between 2 different game sessions, because the player will move from one place to another, and the places are evolving. That you can flip them, and whenever you flip the location on the other side, some events disappear, other enemies can appear, and you will have a very different experience from one session to another.
In these chapters, they you sound like you start with chapter one, and the chapter three is the conclusion of it. So, are these linked together? They're not necessarily separate environments, or could I just, if I want to, just jump straight into chapter two?
You can definitely. I mean, they are. You can definitely jump into chapter 2 or 3. It's just that the power level needed is a bit more intense. So, yeah, you might not live long if you do that. But that's, yeah. I mean, in itself, that's a possibility, for especially for players who already have played the game. They can try to their hand at the chapter 2 or 3 directly. But definitely there is the difficulty increase with the game, and so the players will have to learn what's interesting or not to collect in a chapter to proceed to the next one. Because that's the game is really about the challenge
Hmm.
more than it is about the story. Because the story, you will learn it. It's kind of the frame of the game. You as you play, at first you don't know anything, and then you will slowly get to know the objectives that you need to reach, whether they are the core objective or the secondary objective for the quest. But what really matters for the fun of the experience is about beating the game, beating the challenge, and this you can do it over and over again without doing the same things. You will know that you will need to reach like this main objective, which is like the nut of the story to move to the next chapter. But you need to do that at some point. But before doing that, you will have to, I mean, you will be able to find some other stuff in the chapter which are not necessary to progress, but that will be a great help for that.
Yeah, and I often see different comparisons being made to this game. Just people trying to figure out what exactly it is. But like I've heard, hey, is this like Seventh Continent like, where Seventh Continent, you're exploring this big island and trying to do things on the island, for example. That's one I see referenced a lot. Is this a similar game in that sense, or is it, or how is it different?
That's the difficulty about qualifying this game. It's a really different a different way to look at the exploration genre. For us, it's not at all like the Seventh Continent, because it's much more. I would say it's more fluid, it's much more fast-paced and action-focused than something like a Seventh Continent. The players all play simultaneously. You don't have to wait on your partners to see what's happening in the story. It's a lot about optimizing your resources, but on a more like on a short term way of thinking, meaning that each turn you will draw a hand of cards, and you will have to make the best of those cards to progress in the setting. And you will have to think about what are the obstacles that come your way later in the story. So you can save some of the powerful spells you have, or try to save potions for later and stuff like that. But the way you will navigate in the setting will be kind of incitated by the cards you have, and the way you want to optimize this hand card. So it's I would say that it's way more dense than Seven Continent, and way more yeah, I'd say action focused, high adrenaline experience if you play the prologue. And it's also not uh, it's the narrative of the game is broken apart in lots of tiny those tiny story cards that you can see on the Kickstarter page. And we did that for two reasons. First, so you don't spend too much time reading the story instead of playing, otherwise it would be a very long game. And you will discover the tidbits of the story here and there. And the other reason is that it allows us for this nonlinear game design, which means that you will say it's much easier for us to split the stories into tons of different events, rather than having a big paragraph that is obsolete as soon as something else happen somewhere else. Whether if you have a tiny story linked to tiny events and to another events and another events, even if you don't move in the events the same way, you will still discover those stories.
Yep. We
I
did
don't know
have a
if
question
it's.
pop up on
Mhm.
YouTube from Shrey. And Shrey's question is a
Thanks,
prologue a
Ray.
good indication of how replayable the full game will be? How many times can you replay the prologue on Tabletopia?
No, it's not a good indication about the replay ability. That's what we keep hammering, because the prologue is a much denser experience. It's only 9 locations instead of 40 for a chapter, and it's a bit more scripted. When you get to play it and you will learn the story, there is a specific way that allows you to win the prologue. I mean, I could probably win the prologue very easily, because you have to trigger a couple events to be able to win the game, and it's not the case in the main game, because in the main game, in those 40 locations, Marc Andre, the author, really made sure that you could access to the objectives in a huge number of ways. Whereas in the prologue, there is a path to victory, and this is because at first the prologue was meant to be a tutorial. And in the tutorial, it's much more scripted, and you go from A to B to C. Huh?
Hmm.
And so we expanded it a bit more, so people could see the kind of feeling you would have by moving from one location to another, but it's not as replayable as the core game. I would say the prologue. Uh, Usually, people might win it on their second run, if not on the third run at it. Usually, they lose on the first, except if they get lucky in the way they they explore it, because there are a couple traps. But yeah, I would say that that you people tend to play the product 3 times. We've been talking about it on our Discord. One of the backers played it 5 times, and I think with 5 times we might have seen all the different secrets from the prologue. But it's 9 location, 15 story cards, 12 scripted enemies. When a full chapter is 40 location, 50 stories, and 40 enemies. So that's definitely a different different scope.
Absolutely.
But the prologue is really here to make you see the mechanics of the game and the feeling of exploration and the potential of exploration that you have, those evolving places, those enemies that moves from one place to another,
Hmm.
the way the artificial intelligence is made. So the enemies in some situations will follow you, and won't in some other situations. So that's about seeing the potential of the game. Yeah.
Yeah,
It would have been very hard to show a full replay. I mean, very high replayability with just such a condensed experience, I think.
for sure. You're talking about for the prologue that people are having to play it 2 to 3 times to be able to win or find the conclusion of that.
Hmm.
And this is a much smaller scope. On the experience of the, I don't know, the real game, the
Yeah, yeah.
first chapter, for example. Do you expect that to also hold true? That it would be 2 or 3 times to reach the end, or is that number going to increase or decrease in your estimation?
So I'm referring to Mark in that case because he's the expert on that. And what he told me is that it might likely be the same. Like, I mean, to win on the first try, you would you probably have to get lucky because it's a huge maze,
Hmm.
and there's tons of secrets to find everywhere. And the first game you might be lost in those places, and you happen to I mean, you will find those different secrets, but maybe you wouldn't have put the puzzle together when the time's up. Maybe you will, but maybe not. And I said on the second run, you're more familiar with the places, you know a few things you want to avoid or you want to go to, and in that case, you might succeed and move on. In this game, you are able to move from one chapter to the next as soon as the main objective. It means that you can progress to the next chapter even if you didn't get all the stars that are required, but just the main one. So this is a way for you to proceed even though you didn't find everything. You don't have to be a completist to get to the next step. So that's how usually people can. I would say that on the second run, you might go to the next chapter without all the black stars, and if you go on the third time, you might be able to find enough black stars to move on. So I would say that's about 2-3 times to get to know the chapter pretty well and move on with decent chance for the next chapter.
And because this game is played with a deck of cards, your how you use that deck is going to have some influence on what you do in the game. I know that we actually, I can pull up real quick on the screen here at those who are um, watching YouTube. The cards themselves have a value, and then they also have an action that's associated with that value that gives bonuses to it. So if I play this card, it could give me 2 plus 3 if it's a movement action, but just 2 otherwise, right? I use that 2 to do whatever test I'm trying to do. If it's movement, if it's not movement, it's combat, or picking a lock or
Hmm.
weapons B, right? And so I'm asking the question on if I've played this chapter before and I kind of know where I want to go. Is there a way to fast track it, or is there opportunities where, well, the cards I got don't really allow what I want to do, or is it just a factor of I can't do it as efficiently, but I can still get to what I want to go after on replay of a game?
So yeah, I'd say that there is a way to fast track in the way that you will find that each chapter has shortcuts that are hidden at first. I mentioned it in an update on Friday, I believe. You can find allies or a means of transportation, which differs from chapter to chapter, which allows you to get from very different points on the map very fast.
Mm-hmm.
And so this is even with the, I mean, whichever in any way your hand of your hand of cards can look like any way you want. You will still be able to get to the points you want, I believe, especially if you know all the different opportunities to move fast and to sneak around and find the most efficient way to proceed through the locations.
So this becomes a very much a puzzle on the efficiency side of it
Yes.
to make it to the end.
Yeah, there's a lot of the word puzzle, I think,
Mm-hmm.
is pretty adequate,
Mm-hmm.
because every turn is kind of a puzzle game with what you can do with your hands and where you want to go, and in which order do you want to unlock this and these benefits and avoid this and these pitfalls. That's for sure.
Absolutely.
Mm.
Yeah, and so this game is based on card play, really. And the cards, you have values and actions and what you can do in the game, but the cards are used to complete different tests. And just if people aren't familiar with this, I don't believe there's any randomness in that sense. It's just randomness of what you get in your hands and deciding where do I put my reaches towards this current scenario I'm in, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, Mark didn't want to introduce dice in the game or such, even though he's a big role playing fan and wargamer himself from his younger years. But all the randomness is in the hero decks and in the random enemy deck.
Mm-hmm.
So random enemy deck are crucial to the core of the game design because there's the one that will hamper your movement and that might make you choose to go right instead of left because this monster will be able to follow you while this one is just in the way. And the randomization of the hero deck works the same. So that's the two core random things. All the rest is scripted, and it will just trigger depending on the action of the players. So the players actually have a very strong hold on the unraveling of the game because they're the one that will trigger the reactions, and those reactions are known whenever they want to take their actions. If they know how much they need to have to succeed, like in lock picking a door, for instance, and it's just about do they have the resources, and if not, what can they do to make a good use of the time they have.
Yeah, I also want to get back to a previous point you mentioned, being a cooperative and solo focused channel. I know there's a lot of solo plays out there, but I want to also talk a little about the cooperation in this because I find it interesting that there are no turns in this game. It's just like,
Mhm.
hey, if I want to do something, I just go ahead and do it. It doesn't matter. I don't need to wait for the person in front of me or next to me to go first, right?
Yeah.
So how does that how does that impact the gameplay when you're in a multiplayer scenario?
So you mean like the way the players interact at the table,
Yes, exactly.
or
Uh,
so first, I would say that it totally depends on the group.
okay.
Some group like to talk about everything before going in, and others are just free roaming. When I play, I tend to do my things
Hmm.
and like just play some tricks on my friends. But yeah, it's the how to say the freedom of interaction that Mark left is made so each player can find, with his group of friends, the best way he wants to play the game. What I would recommend is is having at least some, I mean, a slight touch of cooperation to say to decide, okay, I'm in a bad position. Can you give me help? Okay, we've never seen this part of the castle. Should I go there while you do other things? So I mean, people talk between each other, but they don't have to wait on it on each other, which is the pretty cool part to avoid the leader effect, where you have a guy who says, "Okay, you do this, you do that."
Right,
That's
right.
that we didn't want to have that in this game. So I would say like people need to talk between them to be able to succeed, but they don't have to read every sentence the other players are reading
Hmm.
to understand the story, and because they are focused on their hero and what they experience in the story. That's the, the whole game has been thought as a very immersive experience. Like just the way you are in the location. It's not like top down views of a 2D map of a dungeon. It's more like an immersive view where you see like the details of the room, and like the way the players are moving from one place to another. It's like a camera following around the characters. You don't get to see all the useless corridors between places or the empty rooms. You're straight at a point of interest each time the character moves. So it's a lot about immersion, and this immersion is also found in the fact that the players uh, are focused on their hero, and they don't have to wait to see what the others is playing. But otherwise, what I would say, and what Mark also say, that if players keep waiting on each other, reading all the stuff all the players read, I mean, the game might drag on. It might take a longer time because there's lots of text and lots of stuff to uncover and icons and
For
things like
sure.
that. So you have to your own experience and know when to contact, get in touch with the other players to decide what you're doing.
And if you are replaying a mission, let's get back to replayability a little bit.
Mhm.
And I assume that in your group dynamics, you can choose to divide and conquer in some situations. If you know that, hey, we need to go grab these items to get to the next area, you go get this one item, I'll go get the next item, we'll
Mm,
meet back.
mm.
Would that also another way of fast tracking the scenario?
Yes, definitely, definitely. I mean, that's for sure. I mean, just in the prologue, you can see that. I mean,
Mhm.
if you are two players, I was actually talking with a guy on our Discord today that he was telling me that he went that way, and I was like, yeah. And if you are two, it's even faster because one of them stay there and the other triggers something, and then the other go in. So that's definitely a key point to optimize the run if you are playing with different players. Yeah, that's for sure.
Does this also make it a little bit easier in some aspects when playing with multiple players?
it it depends. The game scales pretty well because when you are more, of course, you need more objectives, but you also attract more monsters, and the threats goes increase faster.
Hmm.
While when you are a solo player, you will have not all the time in the world, but you'll have lots of time to explore and to move around and to see the place, because you won't have other people triggering like, oh no, monsters are coming on me, or increase the threat or whatnot. Like you're on your own. So it's really increasing the number of players is a help because you get to see more stuff and you get to coordinate, but at the same time it can be a hindrance because more threats and danger coming at you. So I would say that the experience is different at each player count. That's for sure. And what I wanted to say is that if you are several players, usually what Mark estimated is that we might see in a single ring like 20% of a chapter, maybe,
Hmm.
just by the number of locations of actions you have, and the number of places you can visit. So if you are playing with several players and you experience 20% of the chapter, maybe you would see what the other players are doing, but starting the game again, if you took their path, you will probably find out some stuff that you didn't know because you were too into your own way of exploring the setting.
Yeah, and that's interesting because it sounds like even if I were to sit down with a group and play through a chapter, and maybe come back with a different group, I could still like, oh, I know over there that my friend Phil pull that
Mhm.
lever. Let me go pull that lever. But you're saying that I might go do that and explore and find some other things that even Phil didn't find in his play through it.
Yes, yes,
Okay.
and I mean, and there's some stuff that changed the chapter so much,
Mm-hmm.
like the allies that I was mentioning also in my update. In the chapters, you have people hidden. I mean, people that you can get to join your party, and whenever they join you, if you enter some location where you find their icons, you draw a specific story card, and you can picture how the experience might be different if you find somebody from the setting moving on the places. It will flip the locations. It will trigger some extra events and stuff like that, and your experience will be vastly different from one run to another,
Makes sense.
depending if you choose to get these assets or not.
On the same vein of having a group to play through this game, is it best to have the same group with the same heroes play through chapter one, chapter two, chapter three, or can people drop in and out? How's that managed?
So we made it so you have a chapter save between the game, so you will be able to save all the stuff you have. And we are now working on a mid-game save, which was asked by the backers during the Kickstarter, that will help you, to split the chapter in several game sessions. And I would say that yes, if you want to win, you would probably need to have your party, your heroes from one chapter to another, because they will get experience and they will get items, artifacts, extra stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So that would be the most efficient way. This said, it totally depends on your group. You can have, I mean, you could keep this save and play it with other players that already know the game,
Mm-hmm.
and start with the chapter 2 with these heroes who were played by someone else before. It's doable, totally.
Is it also possible to have a fairly leveled up character that I've been playing through the first chapter and I'm in the second chapter, and have
Mhm.
someone new join and they start from ground zero, level zero, level one, and then also be somewhat I still feel like they're contributing to the overall game without feeling like they're not leveled up and not being able to do enough in the game.
Yeah, I would say that you can. I've never tried it myself so
Mm-hmm.
far,
Mm-hmm.
but I would say that you can. Like, if you have a party of at least two or three experienced soul raiders, and you have one new guy showing up. I mean, the soul raiders are very powerful in
Mm-hmm.
themselves, and so there are. I mean, the other players will have better deck of cards and such, but I do. I mean, the new players will be able to contribute just simply in the way that it's one more people that can discover a new location and secrets and stuff like that, and they can move in the setting, as the other characters. It's not because Solarido's progression is not about levels. It's like
Mm-hmm.
level 1, 2, 3, 4. It's about you improve your deck organically by adding cards in it and stuff like that. So the power level is not as set in stone as having level 1, 2, 3, 4. It's more fluid in this way. So I'm guessing that you can have a new guy showing up at chapter 2, and it will catch up.
Excellent. Let's talk a little bit about the leveling up and the characters, and specifically the soul raiders as you play in the game. What makes them unique?
So what makes them unique is, at the core, it's their deck of cards. They all have different decks, and even if they all have spells, cards with bonus movements, cards with movement bonus, movement and combat. Sorry, they have a different repartition of these bonuses, and they have different spells. Eneko is the only one who has a fireball, for instance. Adonis has two teleportation portal spells instead of one. He also can teleport himself, and he can switch place with somebody else. Zia is the only one who has a high number of lightning bolt spells in her deck. Mater is the only character that can heal the party or decrease the threat threat track. So each soul raider has they all have the same core power level, but they have like specificities in the way you will play. They will interact with their environment. They also have a different bonuses for the scripted actions. Let's say Eneko has a bonus in strength and precision. Adonis in perception and strength, and so on and so forth. So there are differences that make them like unique in their own way. And it's the same for the product progression. The heroic action cards have the same asymmetry. So I was talking about the fireball spell. Actually, Zaya gets it in the later heroic action cards of the game because it's a pretty aggressive Soul Rider, but others might not get it at all.
Would this also affect how you approach different challenges in the game? Let's say I played through a scenario and I know there's a big bad guy, but I've been playing this Soul Raider that's particularly good at combat, and I'm playing
Mhm.
a new Soul Raider I haven't played before, who's maybe more elusive.
Mhm.
Would this also affect that replayability? And now I had to find a different way to approach that problem.
Yes, for sure, for sure. I mean, the 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 best example that comes to my mind is, as I was saying, Adonis, because he's my favorite personally, because he has lots of movements spells, movement shenanigans. He doesn't hit as hard as the other, as an Echo, for instance, which is like the real strong guy in the lot. But the fact that he can swap his place with another Soul Rider, or that he can teleport to a place that he's already been seen without the need of a teleportation portal is some is yeah, it's assets that are very interesting when you start to know the chapter and you know how you want to move in this chapter. And if you need this extra movement, you might go for him instead of another hero, for instance.
Definitely.
Mm.
One other thing I want to call out, we talked about it a little bit in the beginning, but I want to focus on it a little bit because I think it's phenomenal, is the art in this game is fantastic. I love this
Thank you.
art. And you mentioned some of the artists in the
Yeah.
game. I know Magali, for example, I played a lot of, like I mentioned earlier, Lord of the Rings Living Card Game, and she did a lot of art on that, which is absolutely amazing. And I think she did
Mhm.
Magic the Gathering, and even the locations are gorgeous as
Yeah.
well.
Mhm.
So, yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I mean, we have a huge cast of artists. I mean, it's like over 20 artists who helped us on this game. That's a lot. Magali and Guillaume are probably the most
Mhm,
well known.
definitely.
And Jérôme is actually the guy who is a colleague who's coordinating all the art. That's a whole job in itself, and he has the hard work to coordinate the artists, make sure they get the vision of the game and they can have their own style in the game too.
Hmm.
And it's a shout out to him because that's a that's a very intense work. And yeah, it's we have some, like Guillaume Tavernier did only the locations
Uh-huh.
and a few characters, but all the scripted enemies are done by a variety of different artists. Magali is the one who did the heroes, so we have this kind of like specificities for each artist we work with. Mm.
Excellent. I have a few more questions, but I'm getting towards the end of my list of questions. And just a quick heads up to anybody who's watching live on YouTube: if you have questions, drop them in the chat now. We'll get them addressed. But if you don't, that's fine too. I'll run through these questions, and we'll get close to the end here.
Mm.
One of the questions I always like to ask is, what are some of the biggest challenges you face when trying to bring Soul Raiders to life?
There are many because it's a very ambitious game. I would say just the design itself
Hmm.
took years of development from Mark because the fact that you can approach a story from many different ways and having to deal with the chronological order of the events
Hmm.
is was a huge task. I mean, I just saw it just with the prologue. There are a few things that I was working on with Mark, and I was like racking my brain, like, okay, but if this guy is supposed to be dead, how can the location flip after that? And this kind of thing, like, but if you're invisible and he doesn't see you, why is he there? There's in terms of cohesivity, it's a big challenge because the story comes from the game design in Soul Raiders and not the other way around. And that's the icons that generates the story for the players. I mean, they will interpret the icons, the actions they take, and the way they discover the story cards.
Hmm.
So I would say that the game design was probably the hardest part,
Hmm.
and then it was very long work to get all the art and everything done. But to me, for me, one of the hardest thing is to make sure that people get the essence of the game. That's the hardest. I've been trying to do that since the beginning of the campaign, because people keep comparing it, as you say, like Seven
Hmm.
Continents,
Hmm.
Tainted Grail, or
Hmm.
stuff like that, and explaining to the people what the game is about without spoiling the story, and without spoiling all the thing you can do in it. That's a very big challenge, because of course people want to know if they will be able to play over the game over and again, but it's hard to do that. So you have to distill bits of informations here and there and tell them about the big mechanics, and make sure they don't get confused about the kind of game they are backing.
Right.
That's the part. We don't want people to be disappointed when they get the game, because they were hoping to have, I don't know, uh, a big game where you read tons of text about the story, and like story driven game, while it's more about the challenge. And I mean, it's a difficult, let's say, that's equilibrium to find. That's a dance.
Yeah, for sure.
That was a challenge, yeah, and it still is.
Yeah, I had this discussion on our Discord as well with a few folks, and one of the questions that they want to ask is, we've seen the prologue through some other reviewers playing through it, but they're curious if there was any opportunity to show a bit more, more like the start of the first chapter, for example, that they can get a better feel for what this game really is. Because, like you said, it's really hard to judge what this is when you're trying to like explain mechanics but not spoil anything, right? It's a really tough equilibrium or balance, like you mentioned. I don't know if there's
Mhm.
any thoughts around that aspect.
Well, we thought about it. And I mean, the campaign still have 2 weeks to go, so I will probably talk about it again with One for All, with Mark and Isham, and see if we wanted to have a bit more spoiler intensive demonstration, just for them to have a clearer view of it.
Sure.
So yeah, we are considering it at the moment. We still have 2 weeks to go, and that might be an option, but when you started the campaign, we didn't plan to do it. We were
Yeah.
like, okay, let's keep it a surprise, because otherwise, people won't have, the fun will be spoiled. But
Exactly.
now, maybe. Mm.
It's a tough problem to solve. I mean, a lot of people who have
Yes.
these stories, like, what do? You wanna like share this awesome experience that you've been having because you've been playing the real game, but you also don't want people to get
Yeah, it's
spoiled, right?
it's I mean, on a story, I mean, on a game which is like that, which has some
Yeah,
strong narrative components and
yeah,
exploration secrets everywhere. It's hard to communicate on.
absolutely. Okay, let's talk a little bit more about the Kickstarter itself. So you've got a few more weeks as of this current recording to back it.
Yeah.
Um,
Mhm.
let's talk about what's going to happen after the campaign. Mentioned at the beginning of this that there's likely going to be some type of a late back option, I assume, for a period of time.
Yes. Yeah.
Now, probably the big question is this going to hit retail, or is this only going to be a Kickstarter product?
Yeah, that's what we've been explaining in the campaign. It's not gonna hit retail.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It's too because it's too expensive.
Yeah.
It's very costly to produce.
Mm-hmm.
That's a lot, and it's not about the miniatures. It's about also the the cardboard stock and the art and all the work we put in the quality of the components we'll have. And this couldn't hit retail with a decent price, so it won't.
Yeah.
It will be exclude. I mean, it will be available during the campaign. During the late pledge period, we'll have one. Even though, depending on the situation in the world, we might not. I mean, the prices might be different if you didn't get into the campaign and you get into the light pledge. It will. We are hoping not to, but it will depend on the factory costs.
Yeah.
And then we might, depending on the campaign, we might have some left in direct sales at conventions and stuff like that. You see, if we produce a little bit extra, but the
Mm-hmm.
publisher doesn't plan at all to be doing a retail. That's not the kind of product that would be efficient in retail. Like, you know, I don't know if people would be ready to spend like twice the price of the Kickstarter product when it's mostly cards and stuff like that.
Right.
It's complicated.
For sure, for sure. Now, this campaign has had three different chapters in it, and I feel
Mhm.
like this is prime for potential future support, and or maybe another complete different campaign. Is that something that would be a possibility in the future?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay.
It depends on the again, it depends on the overall success. And
Yes.
but if One for All is happy with the campaign, we definitely can think about follow up. That's
Excellent.
for sure. That's something we addressed early in the campaign because everybody was asking for a fourth chapter.
Mm-hmm.
But a fourth chapter is, I mean, a chapter is so big and it's so much time and money and energy to create one that we couldn't like promise a chapter without delaying the game by 1 year,
Sure.
and we didn't. It's not like the game was 4 chapter and we stripped it of one to put it back in the campaign. No, it's absolutely not like that. It's too big of a work to do like that. So we said from the start or almost that it's 3 chapters. There will not be a 4 chapters. It will, if there's something else, it will be after the campaign.
Sure.
But what we are doing now with the stretch goal is that we are including chapter modules that will change the locations in a story. When you do a new run, you can just swap some of the location with the chapter module, and it will totally like change the change the way you will approach the chapter.
Yeah, that's a good way of adjusting a little bit without doing a full
Yeah.
chapter. Because I can imagine with the full chapter, you also have to make sure that there's not an opportunity for people to run to a dead end and get frustrated, right? You need to make sure that there's always an alternative or something cleared for people to act on.
Yes, and plus just the whole way the game was designed, it was made to encapsulate 3 chapters,
Mm-hmm.
and that's it. I mean, regarding the power level of the Soul Raiders, the options they have when they progress, we didn't design the game. I mean, if they would get into a 4 chapter, it would be uncharted territory. We would have to plan for so much more stuff that we couldn't be sure of the balance and and everything like that. So it's that's for a future potential thing.
Excellent. Well, that's the end of my questions. I don't see any other questions on YouTube here, but real quick, where can people best find you?
So, beside the Kickstarter campaign, you mean?
Yes.
And I would say that they can talk to us very easily in our Discord. We have the crowdfunding agency Discord, which is where we talk about Soul Raiders. We have a section dedicated to Tabletopia and one to Soul Raiders. So if anybody has questions besides on the Kickstarter campaigns, they can go there and chat with us. We If it's more about introduction about the game and seeing the previews and everything, we do have a website, soulraiders.com, I believe, where they can go check it out, all the stuff that's been there, and subscribe to the newsletter.
Excellent. I do have a link on the YouTube description below if you're watching on YouTube, so you can go check out the Kickstarter right now.
Cool.
But excellent. Thanks, Jim, so much for your time. This was a blast talking to you about Soul Raiders.
Yeah, it was something I didn't say at the beginning when you asked me about Soul Raiders, but I really wanted to say it is that the philosophy of Soul Raiders is like a role playing game with the tight mechanic of a board game. That's how Mark describes it best. That's what he wanted to do with this ambitious project.
Perfect. Perfect. Yeah, that seems apt from what we've been seeing. So excellent.
Cool.
Well, I don't.
Thanks for having me here.
Yeah, always. We'll have to find another time to sync up in the future. So, but anyone, thanks for watching, and we'll see you at the next stop. Bye bye.